Welcome to our program IVD Ready by May 2024, and welcome to our webinar, Let's Talk Strategy. My name is Simone Latkulik. I'm head of customer success team at Platomics. My background is molecular biology with several years of experience in quality management and quality operations in industry. Now, Platomics is a company based in Vienna, and our mission is to digitize and to automate regulatory processes for all stakeholders in vitro diagnostics. Our goal is to bring safe and effective innovations to market quickly and efficiently for the in vitro diagnostic manufacturers, but also for laboratories and health institutions. We have invited following guest speaker and expert today, Christiane Gebhardt. Her background is biomedicine and biotechnology. Christiane Gebhardt is a quality management consultant, but also a trainer and auditor. She's specialized in the IVDR. As a consultant, she supports teams in medical laboratories to implement proper processes, being compliant with the IVDR, such as requirements when it comes to the so-called GSPRs, the General Safety Performance Requirements, also ISO 15189 accreditation, and proper quality management systems. Andreas Oberleitner, he is head of quality management and regulatory affairs at Platomics. Andreas' background is biomedical engineering. He has more than 20 years of experience in regulatory affairs and quality management in IVD, IVD industry. He's very experienced in the domain of conformity assessment for medical devices. Now here is the agenda. So I will start with a brief overview of the IVD Ready program and give an introduction to the program, especially for new participants. Then our guest speaker, Christiane Gebhardt, she will talk about the theory of strategy. And then I will hand over to Andreas. He will talk about the topic from a more practical perspective. You can ask always questions in the Q&A section during the webinar, and we will try to answer those questions by the end of the webinar. We try to make the session as interactive as possible, and we will also ask a question to the audience later that you can answer in an anonymous way, and we will present the results of this question also then after the first expert talk. Now, the in vitro diagnostic regulation, the IVDR, applies to all member states of the European Union. And it was first published in 2017 with a 5-year transition period. The IVDR was rolled out on May 26 in 2022. The next set of requirements will become effective in May 2024, posing really significant challenges for laboratories and health institutions. To tackle the next round of the IVDR implementation pending in May 2024, the first thing your lab really needs is a strategy for documenting your workflows. Doesn't matter whether you have 50 or 250 in-house tests. This webinar today will outline several possible approaches to reduce complexity, also to avoid redundant documentation, and we will of course introduce also our digital tool and a wizard to help her here in this case. So Platomics has therefore launched the IVD Ready program to facilitate full IVDR compliance for all in-house developed tests for laboratories and health institutions until May 26 in 2024. This includes setting up documents like the intended purpose, device classification, risk management, or performance evaluation, and much more. Over the course of the year, we will accompany laboratories by offering webinars, workshops, and we will give additional information on various thematic topics. Each month, a webinar focusing on a specific theme will be held, as shown on this slide, over the course of the upcoming year. But what makes this program really unique is the fact that we not only educate, but also enable all participating labs to create complete LTD documentation via our digital platform. We really try to reduce here complexity. It's much faster, and we also guarantee high quality and consistency in the documentation. And additionally, it's completely free of charge, exclusively for laboratories and health institutions. Now, the kickoff webinar of the IVD Ready program was on June 20, where we described the content of the program and also gave an introduction to the IVDR for laboratories. The video of the webinar is already available on our homepage in 2 languages, in German and in English. The videos of all upcoming webinars and recordings in the future will be available on our homepage in German and in English as well. Of course, also all additional information, wizards, and content of the program will be available in 2 languages. Again, the IVD Ready program and the use of the IVD Assistant for creating IVDR compliant documentation for in-house tests are both free of charge for all diagnostic labs. It is important to know that access to our software tool, the IVD Assistant, is really essential to actively participate in the program. Why? Because we will release templates and wizards in the IVD Assistants during the IVD Ready program on different topics that are necessary to really achieve the IVDR compliance of your in-house tests by 2024. So now we will start today's topic. Let's talk strategy. I will start with a question to the audience. Do you already have a comprehensive strategy how to group your in-house tests in place? You can answer this question that appears in the pop-up in an anonymous way with yes or no, and we will present the statistics of your answers after the talk of our expert Christiane Gebhardt. Now I will hand over to Christiane Gebhardt. She will talk about the theory of strategy, how a lab can approach the IVDR compliance of their in-house tests. So I will stop sharing my screen now and will hand over to Christiane Gebhardt.
Thank you, Simone, for your introduction. Welcome, everybody. Today, we talk about IVDR strategy for medical laboratories. So far as we know, the IVDR sets high-level standards, particularly also for medical laboratories, in case of patient safety and patient cares. And therefore, also this high regulatory requirements, they are also focusing the in vitro diagnostic medical devices. And since the law, the EU law, became effective, this enhanced regulatory requirements are directly addressing not only the economic parties, such as legal manufacturer, they are also addressing all the, we call it, healthcare institution. And this is really important. And therefore also it's important that in particularly medical laboratories receive support in these challenging times. And also for us, it is important to ensure patient safety and patient care. In this case, due to this situation, we need proper strategies. And now we talk about that in relation with the IVDR, particularly also with GSPR. But what should this strategy include? It is important that it is based on a systematic approach. Also, that we have defined workflows, and it should follow a risk-based assignment. How can we start? How can we build up the systematic approach? Firstly, it is really important that we evaluate the present legal entity. So if the term and the definition of a healthcare institution is applicable. Secondly, it's really important in case we are in a healthcare institution according to IVDR to identify all the in-house devices which are used in diagnostic treatment, so in a medical intended purpose. And thirdly, you know, it's not only Article 5 related, yes, on one hand, but the huge challenge is also Annex 1, the general safety and performance requirements. This means also that we have to build up a grouping, that we also start our workflows and have different scenarios, that it becomes possible to analyze Annex 1 and GSPR on a risk-based assignment. When we start to evaluate the legal entity, what is a healthcare institution by law? So therefore, it is defined, the healthcare institution, for organizations, just for example, like hospitals or medical laboratories, such entities that support the healthcare system and directly address patients' needs. This is clearly different from such entities which provide services in the direction of health lifestyles, like gyms, like fitness centers. So they are not included into the definition healthcare institution. When we come to the next section that we say, okay, we have to identify our in-house devices, what should we take into account? So this is really important that we have a look on the scope. The scope of an in-house device means also this device is manufactured and used only within one health institution. So this is really important and related to Article 5 of IVDR. Therefore, in this case, it is not legally justified to have any economic interest or to produce devices on a larger scale. How can we find out? Now I would like to come to the process workflows. How can we identify those in-house IVDs? It is recommended, therefore, to start a decision-making process, to start a scheme. So, for example, in the healthcare institution, CE IVDs are used, for example, in combination. They are used within the intended purpose, so the specification of the manufacturer. In this case, it is no in-house IVD. So therefore, the scenario says no in-house IVD is belongs to this pathway. Another example would be same situation. We use CE IVDs in combination, but there are changes. We changed the protocol, for example, for our antibody dilution. This would mean we do not stick to the IFU. So there are changes, there are deviations from the specification by the manufacturer. So this goes into the direction of an off-label use. And here the result is, this is the criterion of an in-house IVD. Many cases of off-label uses go in the direction of an interoperability case. So that means devices are differently combined as specified by the manufacturer. Or, for example, as mentioned before, if there are changes in the protocol. Another hint regarding the changes in the protocol and also regarding the documentation of the IFU by manufacturer. For example, for antibody dilution, if the manufacturer stated this is a recommendation, it doesn't mean that is the mandatory frame. So a recommendation is something that provides kind of freedom here for the protocol, for the use. So when we have here this overview about possible scenarios, we talked about, in this case, in-house IVDs. We talked about the off-label use. And what could be another possibility in this case? Maybe we have a CE marked machine, PCR machine, and we combine it with a research use only assay, DNA extraction kit. So it goes directly in the category of an in-house IVD. What we can see if we go further to the left, when we maybe combine research use only products, or we have solely research use only products, or another scenario to design and manufacture antibody by the organization, by the healthcare institution itself. That means also the risk level significantly increase for these devices. Therefore, in parallel, the healthcare institution has to prove the products, has to show also valuable performance data. And in this case, also the effort for the healthcare institution additionally increases. So we talked about the scenarios, and now we talked about also about the workflows and the decision making scheme. What could be possible? How can we identify in-house IVDs in the healthcare institution? We know these things are very related, and they are requirements also regarding Annex 1, the general safety and performance requirements. And these are very challenging. Why? They are also challenging because they mainly address legal manufacturer. So the interpretation for medical laboratories is quite tough. Another aspect is also, we know there are different scenarios, and therefore it is also important to start a risk-based assignment, because you need a proportional approach based on the different risk levels of the product. So what is also important to mention, it is not only the Annex 1 that provides profound data, performance data for the in-house IVD. Also related to Article 5, it is required that healthcare institution follow or fulfill the requirements of Article 56. That means also performance evaluation, here the clinical evidence data. So coming to the third step, the risk-based assignment. Also, as mentioned, they are based on the identified or on the classified scenarios, on the different scenarios. And for example, in this case, it's really important here to implement a risk-based scheme and therefore to use it to analyze Annex 1, the general safety requirements, and also to identify what is applicable in each scenario to fulfill the requirements of the GSPR. So, for example, it makes a huge difference when we look on the right side. If you use a CE IVD, for example, you use a CE IVD PCR machine, and in combination with a CE IVD kit, but the kit is different from the IFU, so from the specification of the manufacturer. This is one scenario. And compared to another risk level, for example, if you use a CE, a research use only device, stated only for research purposes, not for a medical intended purposes, in combination with a RUO antibody. So what you can see, there are different scenarios and also different situation that leads to a higher risk for patients. Therefore, it is important to fulfill all the requirements of the GSPR, and that means any risk that goes into the direction also for patient risk has to be avoided. And it is also important to provide valuable product performance data and the clinical evidence. In this case, coming to this section, it is really important to start this risk-based assignment. So to close it, in this case, to have these three sections and how can we build up a strategy. So for the first identification, for the first evaluation, is Article 5 applicable for the organization? This is really important. Check, we did it. Yes, we analyzed the definition of a healthcare institution. If this definition applies, then the next step is the identification of in-house devices. Are there any in-house devices used for diagnostic purposes? So this is really important. We know there are different combinations. So therefore, it's also important to classify them. The grouping is really important, but it has to go along in a systematic manner, and therefore process workflows are required. After that, it is a requirement by law that in-house devices fulfill the general safety and performance requirements, Annex 1. So in this case, to work on a proportional, also on a risk-based approach, it is important to start a kind of risk-based assignment. If you need, or if you want to know about more strategies, if you want to have more input about regulatory requirements and a valid method, so feel free to reach out and let's connect on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you, Christiane, for your talk. It was very interesting getting insights into the theory of the IVDR on the IVDR strategy. Now I will hand over to Andreas, but before that, I would like to present the results from the question that was asking in the beginning to the audience. So we received a lot of answers, and actually 69% of the labs, the users here, said, no, we don't have a proper strategy in place so far. And with this, I would like to hand over to Andreas. He will talk on the strategy from a more practical perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone, and good afternoon from my side to everyone. Thanks for listening. Thank you also to Christiane for paving the way and explaining all the content or context that we have to take care of regarding the IVDR itself from the point of view of a laboratory or a health institution. Well, we all know that one of the biggest challenges is that the IVDR originally has been written for manufacturers, or the target group is, of course, the manufacturers and also other players on the market, and therefore it's always a little bit hard to map all of those requirements to the situation within the laboratories. What we also learned is that generally, in many cases, it's not only about one device. We are talking always about workflows or combinations of different devices, and we have already learned right now about different scenarios which could be applicable, and which would mean that in many cases we would end up with such an in-house IVD scenario, and that would need would create some requirements to the laboratories. What we did at Platomics here is that we are creating a tool that is exactly working on the solution or helping on the way, on the road to IVDR conformity for your in-house devices, the IVD Assistant, which will then be released by end of this month. But before that, we also would like to introduce you to already our first wizard we created to help you in identifying if you're even eligible to be a health institution according to the law, and on the other hand, which scenarios or even which strategies might be applicable for you. But enough said for now. I would like to switch over to one single slide just to explain a little bit on the main properties or the benefits you can get of this first wizard. For that purpose, I would like to switch over to the screen sharing. Okay, let's talk strategy. Topic of today. We created a small strategy wizard, which you might like to use already right now immediately. This wizard, what is it? It is a small but nice clickable tool which will be made available on our website. Later, it will definitely also become part of the whole IVD Assistant, as it is always the first step to consider the whole scenarios around before just jumping into the work itself. First, you need to sort out which types of in-house IVDs you have in your laboratory, and are you even a lab, so a health institution according to the legal definitions and so on. So, and helping you in defining that, we have created that smart tool for that purpose. The nice thing here is that it will be completely free, accessible on our website, and it would look similar like this one. What does it contain? So first of all, it gives another introduction into the IVDR, so you can read some additional information you might find useful. You can also watch some videos explaining some situations, some scenarios, and also give you a lot of background information. You can also skip, of course, this stuff if you read it or if you walk through it several times. It contains also a small helper in finding your own national competent authority within your country. It explains some basic terminology. Maybe many of you are already very familiar with that, but for everyone who is a beginner, or if you want to strengthen your knowledge on that, it could also be very helpful. And we even included some quizzes. Those are just quizzes more or less for fun. They have no impact on the wizard itself, of course. They are just helping you in seeing if you have kept all of this information. And of course, you can decide on your own if you want to do those or not. It also contains the first wizard, which is to find out if the Article 5.5 is even applicable to your institution. So more or less, is your institution a health institution according to the IVDR definition? It helps you also in understanding the topic of the intended purpose and its impact on everything, because each in-house device also receives an intended purpose by the manufacturer, which actually will be you as the laboratory. And more on that we will present in the follow-up webinar on 25th of July, but it already gives a sneak preview on that. And last but not least, it also contains information on the different device scenarios, which you have seen already in the decision trees presented by Christiane before. So we are talking mainly about 5 main scenarios here, and the tool will help you in already identifying your potential scenarios here. And again, a quiz can help you in priming your knowledge here. We have also included a scenario wizard. This is exactly to find your individual situation. So you can play that multiple times if you want to find out if a particular scenario within your health institution is maybe one of those situations, combinations of RU with CE and so on. One of these, then you can probably find out with the wizard here. And last but not least, many laboratories have to deal with maybe, let's say, 50 or 100 different in-house in vitro diagnostic devices. That means that they potentially have to think of what would be the best strategy to reduce my effort in creating documentation. Do I really need to create a documentation for each and every of these devices? Can I maybe combine some of these? Or what is possible there? So first of all, we give some information within the wizard on the potential strategies which are, from our point of view, available. And on the other hand, another wizard to help you identifying a potential strategy for your individual case. I would now directly switch over to the wizard itself and just quickly click through it. So you have seen it already immediately right now. This wizard will be available, as I already said, on our website, and it will be made available in 2 different languages in the beginning, in German and English. As this here is an English webinar, of course, I would now go the English pathway. And the wizard is very simple. It's first, of course, it gives you a certain disclaimer that you need to be aware that, of course, you need to double check some of the information from time to time. I will now accept it, and then you will be immediately guided to the first part of this interactive wizard here. So, okay, I can now start the introduction, just clicking on the button here. And the first question here is that you can either select reading the text, or the wizard will also provide you some informational videos. By clicking on this link, you can also open a video. If you're more a person that likes watching videos, then you probably would like this way. For the sake of time, I will now just go through the textual passage here. The wizard always asks you if you want to skip certain parts. For example, this first part here will talk about the basic information. If you're already aware of the situation and you have already some background information or basic knowledge, then you can always skip these parts. I will just quickly click through it so you can see how it would look like. I would say we just quickly click through the text. It talks about the in vitro diagnostic regulation, some background information, some topics, and then you have even the option here to find out about your national competent authority. If you're already aware of your competent authority, you can of course also skip this part. But if I would like to find out, for example, to find the national competent authority who is responsible for my laboratory, then I would select it here. For example, for Austria, it tells me that the BASC is responsible here for the monitoring of my in-house devices. As you know, in-house devices will be monitored by the national competent authorities in the future. It also tells me here that if I have an accreditation according to ISO, for example, ISO 15189 in that case, then a different entity is responsible here, which is the accreditation of Austria in the ministry. Okay, then we have a full part dealing with key terminology. For the sake of time, I would also just quickly skip it and click through it. You see that very important parts or terms like the intended purpose will be explained here one more time. If you like, you can read through it. But I will now just simply skip it for now. And yeah, if you are even willing or you dare to start a quiz on that, then you can even start a quiz right now. Of course, I would not like to reveal the questions. This will be the funny part, then therefore I will also skip it right now. Okay, and that was already the first part, and this will be guiding you directly to the second section, which is the in-house IVD wizard. So this will now become really the interactive part. First, we start again with some background information to prime you with all the knowledge which might be necessary. And yeah, we are starting with the first question. Are we even a health institution according to the Article 5.5 and be able to use this exemption at all? So first of all, it asks me regarding the region, because of course only laboratories within the European and also EFTA member states are eligible. So I would say yes, I am that one. Then I will get asked what is the best definition for my institution. In my example, I would say I'm now a laboratory. So which type of laboratory? This is important because yeah, the primary purpose plays a major role in those definitions. I would say, as you, most of you are a diagnostic laboratory here. And then we have to answer one more question, which is dealing with the primary purpose of the institution itself. Let's say our primary purpose is diagnostic services. We do more than 50% of all of our work in this domain. Okay, and then now we get to the important part, which is asking for, is the manufacturing and also the usage of our in-house devices within the same institution, because this is a mandatory requirement. I answer with yes here, and then I'm also asked if I ship my in-house IVDs or if I move them or hand over to other legal entities as well. The text gives you also some additional information, but in my virtual example, I would say, no, I don't do that. Yes, then as you might know, there is also this delimitation or the topic regarding the industrial scale. In-house devices must not be manufactured in a so-called industrial scale. This text gives you also some more information on that topic. And I say now, okay, no, I don't do that. Okay. And according to all my entries, the system tells me, okay, I have green lights, the exemptions of the Article 5.5 are applicable to me, and I can proceed to the next chapter. Okay, in this next chapter, we will talk about the information on device scenarios. We have learned already from Christiane which scenarios there might be. So it's not only one single device. It's in many cases, the situation is a little bit more complex. That means that we are often combining different devices with different regulatory clearance status to one workflow, for example. And yeah, the intended purpose itself plays a major role. On the one hand, the intended purpose of each and every device. RUO, by definition, is already kind of a purpose like research use only, so therefore not intended to be used by a manufacturer for diagnostic purposes, which means that you, by using it for diagnostic purposes, of course, already are repurposing it and therefore more or less become the manufacturer and also the responsible person for this device within a combination, for example. So first of all, we have again the option to watch a video, which I will not do right now, but you, of course, I strongly recommend to also walk through those videos if you like to, and would immediately continue right now. And then I will again get asked if I want to engage a little bit more with the topic of the intended purpose. It depends on your background knowledge. If you want to learn more about this topic, then you can say yes, which I would quickly do, just clicking through it. You learn about the definition and why it is important. I will skip this section a little bit faster right now. It explains what the important cornerstones of such an intended purpose definition contain. It's always good to know about that, even if you need to analyze the intended purpose definition of a certain manufacturer, for example. Yes, then I would also like to know more about the scenarios which are out there. We are talking about 5 typical scenarios, so therefore I say yes for now. This section trains you on the 5 major scenarios we have identified within the tool, and you will see those scenarios all over the whole application in the future again and again, because this is exactly what makes the difference in this risk-based approach, and also the amount of effort you have to put into the definitions, into the descriptions, into the activities, and of course also into the documentation of your in-house devices. Okay, clicking through them again. So we have those 5 scenarios. One is the CE scenario, but the other ones are again in-house devices. You can read through them carefully, of course, while walking through the wizard on your own. And yes, then there's again the question if you would like to attempt the quiz here. This is just for yourself. It has no impact again. For the sake of time, I will skip it right now. Okay, and now it's time to start the scenario wizard. So for your own situation, the tool provides you with a wizard which you can click through with several questions to find out which scenario would fit best to your situation. So you can do that for one device or one workflow or one combination of devices. And of course, you can repeat that for several times if you want to do it, or if you have different situations or scenarios within your laboratory. So first of all, what does our device or workflow include? This is the exclusion criteria of having only patient specimens or protocols within the workflow. Of course, we do have different devices, therefore I use this last answer. Then the system wants to know which types of devices do we include. Is it maybe only a single device, or as in most cases, I will now combine, for example, instrument, kit, reagent on software. Those are the typical components which I find now in my example workflow. Yes, and the next question is asking, do you combine those devices to achieve one medical purpose? Yes, exactly. That's the reason why I selected several ones. Which type of combination do we use? Is it only consisting of CE devices, or do we mix up CE devices and non-CE devices? let's say, okay, in our case, I have some CE products, but I also used several RUO kits, for example. Is the combination within the intended purpose of the CE marked devices, so as given by the manufacturer within the IFU? I would say I'm using my products, my CE products, always within the intended purpose in my example here, therefore yes. And then one more question, do I even develop my own products? Which means, do I even program my software, or do I mix my own reagents? I would say no for now. Okay, and here is our result. You see that we have the 5 different scenarios. You will see them again and again. And the scenario number 4 means exactly it is the combination of non-CE products and CE products. So therefore, first of all, the Article 5.5 definitely is applicable to me because of the situation that I have included RUO devices. The system tells me that, I need to walk through the Article 5.5 and also fulfill all of the requirements. And of course, our IVD Ready program and also the tools itself, the IVD Assistant, can help you exactly on that. Fine. Last but not least, documentation strategies. So one step back, if we consider or think of all of our in-house devices within the laboratory, then we potentially might end up in the question, okay, and how do I set up my documentation strategy? We definitely do not recommend to just jump into the cold water and start documenting things. You definitely need to set up a certain strategy, not only for one IHIVD, but even for the whole bunch of in-house devices. Potentially, you find a way to combine multiple in-house devices and maybe save time even on creating your documentation. Or maybe you only have one single in-house device, which is maybe definitely only one product at the end. And maybe you focus on that one and say, okay, I will only document this specific part. But let's dive into the wizard itself. First of all, some more explanation texts. I will quickly continue here. Again, I can skip or walk through the introduction about the potential strategies. I would say I would have a quick glance on it. We have identified 4 main strategies. One is to document a single in-house device, which could be only one device, for example. The second one is a typical one to document a whole workflow. The third one is to document different modules because of their similarity in their properties. That could be a way. And last but not least, if you have many workflows which deviate only a little bit within their properties or technical aspects, but have mainly the same intended purpose, then potentially you end up in such a strategy that could be the best way for the documentation for your devices. Okay, so let me just quickly walk through the wizard itself. I would like to do now a check on my hopefully perfect strategy right now. First of all, I need to answer the question, do you have more than one IHIVD implemented in your health institution? Let's say yes, I have several ones. Does it consist, or one of my IHIVD consist of one single component? I would say no, because most of them are really workflows consisting of multiple devices. Do my in-house devices have a similar, even the same intended purpose themselves? I would say no. I provide different tests with different purposes. Then is one of the components in the workflows incorporated in multiple workflows? I would say yes. For example, I have only one sequencer, for example, which is used in many of these workflows, so therefore yes. And then there is the question, do some of my workflows share certain steps or procedures? For example, if I have always the same pre-analytical process without any deviation, then I could also say yes. Okay, and that's it. Based on these questions, the system now suggests me the following scenario or strategy. It suggests me strategy 3, which was to consider segregation between different fractions of steps. So for example, to say I could consider creating one technical documentation for the pre-analytical part, because it might always be the same one, and maybe have an individual one additional documentation in a modular concept for additional parts of the whole test, of the whole workflow, dealing more with the more specific topics. Yeah, and with that, we are already through the whole wizard, and we have learned already that yes, we are a health institution according to Article 5.5, so we need to do something with the in-house requirements. Secondly, we learned about our scenarios. We learned that in our example here, the scenario was the case that we were combining RUs with CE devices, and therefore we have to do a certain level on the risk-based approach. And last but not least, we also learned about a potential strategy, how to combine all my documentations into the overall documentation, which I need to provide later to my national competent authority. And I also learned who actually is my national competent authority. Yeah, and with that, I would like to recommend just to try it out on your own. You will find it on our website, on the platomics.com website, and also on the ivdready.eu website, which is leading to exactly the same position. Yeah, more on that later with the next webinar. And with that, I would like to thank you and hand over back to Simone.
Thank you, Andreas, for your comprehensive talk and practical guide and introduction to our wizard. I will share my screen now. Just a short note, maybe it was too quickly for the moment. The wizard is available in English and in German, but we will soon have also other languages available. For instance, in French and Spanish are on the list. So the wizard will be available also in different other languages. I'm sharing my screen now quickly. So you can immediately start using our wizard on our homepage, as Andreas already mentioned, to define your strategy. You will find the link also in our chat in the QA section to directly navigate to the strategy wizard. Yeah, as we said, the approach and the strategy for documenting your in-house IVD is crucial and defines the content also of the intended purpose. A quick note about the program and the IVD assistant from us. To fully participate in the program, access to the IVD assistant is essential. During the registration process, you may have already pre-registered for access to the IVD assistant. Those who have done so will receive their login details from us via email very soon. If you haven't pre-registered for the IVD assistant, you can contact us via email, and or you can also register directly on our webpage. For those that have pre-registered to the IVD assistant, you will receive your user credentials and the initial password to have access to the tool by July 25. If you would like to register for the whole webinar series of our program, you can do this via email to info@platomics.com. Also, of course, if you have questions or feedback, you can always contact us via email to info@platomics.com. Here, a brief outlook. On July 25 at 2 p.m., we will have the next webinar with the title, Give It a Purpose. The next step after defining a strategy, of course, and approach is formulating the intended purpose for your in-house test. For this, we have invited another IVDR expert, Dr. Andreas Eckelt. From here, this webinar will also cover the documentation of qualification as medical device and also the risk classification under the IVDR. With this date, we will have major updates on our IVD assistant, and we will release the intended purpose wizard, so another wizard that will help us and automate the generation of the IP of the intended purpose in our tool. This will be your first activity within our platform. You will be able to generate the intended purpose within 5 minutes. Once again, I want to express my sincere thanks to all the participants who have joined us from all over Europe, actually, and our program IVD Ready by May 2024. And in the end, you will see again a pop-up window with a question that you can answer if you want. You can let us know which manufacturer are actually important for your lab. This is important for the next webinar and when it comes to the topic Workflow Studio. With this, I say thank you very much, and I wish you a wonderful afternoon, and of course, on the behalf of the whole Platomics team.